There's a certain charm about stabbing people with long, sharp, pointy, yet flexible metal objects. Look at all the stories that utilized fencing. Robin Hood, Zorro, The Three Musketeers, any number of pirate movies all embrace this particular love of poking about. There's a reason. Lightly armored fighters swinging fencing weapons make for quick, athletic combats compared to knights just beating on each other. Visually, it's dramatic and engaging. In gameplay, it's hard to get right. The Savage Coast tried to capture the essence of dueling. I'll leave it up to you to see if they got it right. Welcome to Mystara. I'm Mr. Welch, and remember, the pointy end goes into the other guy. This wasn't an easy video to make. I've been writing and rewriting it for over a week. As it's a Savage Coast topic, the necessary sections are scattered across multiple books and magazines. I'm using information from the Red Steel box set, the Savage Baronies, and Dragon number 232. This video will be a bit crunchier than usual because the relevant sections were about making light weapon fighting work in a setting where armor is king. D&D doesn't normally do fencing rules well, especially in the early editions. The limited armor class options and heavy specialization requirements meant you had to go all in on character design before you got good enough to stand up to the regular fighters. And even then, the game favored the dude in plate mail over the guy that could write his name with a blade, as long as his name was Zed. The Savage Coast, at least the Savage Baronies, borrowed heavy from the colonial Spanish period, and the Reconquista Spanish period, and the Renaissance Spanish period, and the Moorish Spanish period, and a lot of Spanish periods, let's just say that. While this explains all the Spains, it requires a lot of tweaking to make that style of fighting work in the rules. To do this, the box set introduced two kits for players to utilize, the Swashbuckler and the Honor Bound. There's also the Noble, which requires you to take proficiency with the saber, but it lacks any other combat-related skills, so it was a poor third choice. The Swashbuckler was the first of the kits and focuses on fencing weapons. It also has a lot of prerequisites, meaning you need a score of 13 in every stat except for Wisdom and Constitution. And you don't want to skimp on the latter either, as you're going to get hit a lot. Before taking other weapon options, you have to be proficient in the rapier, saber, main gauche, and stiletto. Not that you're going to take any other weapon proficiency, as all your special rules involves those four stabby boys. If you're wearing light or no armor, you get a -2 bonus to your AC. And this is the lower the AC the better era of D&D. In short, you get the equivalent of wearing chainmail when you're only wearing leather. The book also suggests you utilize all the optional rules for hand-to-hand combat to compensate for this lack of armor options, because you're going to need every advantage you can get. Then you have the Honor Bound, which has a staggering 2.5 pages of background before you get to the rules. This is supposed to represent any number of warrior types that has to follow a large code in how they fight and conduct themselves out of combat. They give the samurai as an example of an honor bound, including a picture of an elven samurai. That's the example. In a setting based on the Iberian Peninsula, along with the Franks, English, and French. Other examples include orders of paladins, military units with a particular esprit de corps, or lone wolves that follow their own ethics. Rules-wise, they get a favored enemy, and lots of bonuses for hitting that chosen enemy. But as far as fencing rules, they don't get anything special outside of a recommendation. The Savage Baronies have the most duelists by far, with the Lupin Renardi also having significant numbers. Because of this focus on stabbing people with panache and tightly controlled duels, the nations have developed a rather detailed Code of Duelo. This is primarily to keep fighting types from turning the streets into a scene from John Wick. Every country has its own laws regarding on how to challenge people, the terms of the duel, and what weapons can be used. A fighter familiar with one nation had best check the laws of different nations before picking up that gauntlet. The rules for dueling in game terms are for two combatants only and do not apply to a general melee. The nations are strong adherents to rule number 3 of Fight Club, only 2 guys to a fight. The fights can be to first blood, or when one person is injured enough to stop the duel. After every strike, the wounded are offered a chance to apologize or surrender, but that isn't necessary. If the fight is to the death, surrender is impossible. A person killed who has refused to apologize is considered to have died an honorable death, but there are no charges against the victor. Duels to the death are only legal in certain nations. Otherwise, combatants cannot kill their opponent without first offering a chance to surrender. The government establishes the weapons allowed in duels, typically swords. Daggers have been allowed in combat in certain situations, but both opponents must agree to the change. Even then, knives are considered the weapon of the lower classes, so no gentleman of status would consider using them in an honorable duel. Pistol duels are unusual, except in Renardi and Cimarron, because it's Texas, remember? The rules for those fights are even stricter because it's much harder to kill somebody with a stray sword thrust than a stray bullet. Some duels allow just a single shot. If no one is hit, the matter is considered settled, no matter what the combatants think. Continuing a feud after a duel is fought is frowned on in every nation. If a firearm duel is to the death, the fighters can reload as much as they want, or just bring multiple pistols. Hand crossbows are another option, but a very rare one, as people who insist on those weapons are typically looked down on. No other weapons are allowed in legal duels, but anything goes if the authorities are notified otherwise. Duels with spells or even legacies are possible, but very rare. Only inheritors can duel with legacies, since everyone else doesn't have the capability anyways. Regarding wizard duels, the only restrictions is that the duelist must register their event with local authorities. This is mainly for the safety of bystanders. Nobody wants fireballs at 10 paces in the middle of a town. The wizards are left to their own devices to set up the nature of the duel and the conditions for victory. The local town magistrate usually just smiles and nods as they explain the conditions set down. As long as the wizards don't break their own rules and don't burn down the town, the authorities are more than happy to let them fight. Because of the one-on-one nature of dueling, the rules for combat are greatly expanded to give players more options than just you swing, I swing. Called shots, parries, riposte, and other maneuvers are encouraged and expanded upon in the dueling section. So dust off your combat and tactics book, the one that you've been hiding in shame for all those years, because now you're going to need it. If an attack roll is a 1, you can take a free strike in return or try to break your opponent's blade. Every hit can inflict a wound that reduces THAC0 as you whittle down your opponent from various cuts. If there's an optional rule in a sourcebook for sword fighting, it's allowed in a duel. Just follow those guidelines and you will be fine, as long as you win. Every nation has its own rules for dueling, and this being the Red Steel setting, naturally the various books don't agree on what they are. Go with the rules from the Savage Baronies box set, as they are far more expansive, and that one came out after Red Steel. Cimarron, being Texas, prefers pistol duels at all times. When a challenge is given, the local authorities will set the time and place to avoid stray shots and to provide the two combatants time to cool off. Guadalante also prefers pistol duels, but sword fights there are not uncommon. One famous trick in pistol duels is to shoot your opponent's hand or weapon, which, if successful, ends the fight as the opponent is now disarmed and either has to stand down or has no way of fighting back anyways. The rapier is the weapon of choice in the other baronies, with a few exceptions. Long swords are popular with mercenaries in Torreon and Narvaez, but are unheard of outside those regions. Sabers are the weapons of choice in Villaverde, Texeirias, and Guadalante, though rapiers aren't uncommon either. All fights are done in a defined area on land, except for Villaverde and Texeirias, which stipulate that all duels must be fought on board a ship. In addition to these rules, Almiron, Saragon, and Gargona ban duels to the death, and will have a law enforcement official there to regulate any legal duel fought. If the official declares that the duel is concluded, even if one side hasn't conceded, the fight stops then and there. There are 2 types of officials assigned to each duel. Each combatant will have a second, who is there to primarily stop the other side from cheating. If a non-combatant is challenged to a duel, their second may step in to accept the challenge. This discourages people from challenging aging storekeeps to duels when they don't give the adventurers a discount. In pistol duels, the second simply inspects the pistols to ensure they are both in working order, then steps back to watch the fight. The other official is the mediator, and they are there to ensure both duelists can fight. The mediator will call breaks in a duel if it goes too long, allowing both combatants to catch their breath. In the more honorable duels, the mediator ensures replacement blades are available in case of a weapon break. They are rarely used in duels to the death. Instead, they supervise duels where a specific point of honor is contested, or even just a friendly duel between masters. Then we get to the section on the fighting styles of the Savage Coast, and these are all found in Dragon 232 and never mentioned again. These are obscure and optional rules for people who want to sword fight like Zorro. You pick between 4 different swordsman schools, and you know you can't double up on any of them. Then you pour all of your proficiencies into buying special moves, called passes, from your chosen school. These passes range from basic maneuvers to the death move, with 2 steps in between. The level of your passes can never exceed your total for the next lowest tier. You can't have 2 advanced passes if you only have 1 basic pass. Passes are triggered when you exceed a target's armor class by a certain amount. You have to beat the armor class by 5 on your total roll for a basic pass. And this number increases by 1 for each level of advanced passes. And this is always assuming that you are using a rapier. For other swords, you suffer a 1-point penalty to the amount required to trigger a pass. Sorry, saber fighters. A death blow requires you to beat the target by 8 points. And that will almost always end the fight right then and there because your blow resulted in their death. Hence the term death blow. Kind of explains itself. There are 4 schools represented, each with their own sub-rules. Dominguez specializes in 2-weapon fighting, requiring you to buy the 2-weapon proficiency, but does eliminate the offhand penalty for your other weapon. Their passes focus on hitting people with 2 weapons or increasing the chances of hitting them with your offhand. It also has a large number of defensive abilities because of the second weapon. Galvacante is all about brute force. It's pure offense with a focus on damage. It's raw, simple, and wonderfully uncomplicated. Moncorvo is the most popular school, and it's the Errol Flynn school. Lots of environmental interaction, scaring the opponent, or just making them look like an idiot. Verdigeld is the non-lethal option. It's popular with paladins and honor-bound and focuses on disarming or disabling your foe. It's the only school where the death blow doesn't kill the enemy, instead just knocks them out. The other three schools have the same rules for their death blow, despite all of them having different flavor texts on how they do it. In short, the opponent can no longer fight and dies in 2d4 turns, unless medical attention is required. That's the rules for duels, duelists, and fighting styles of the Savage Coast. They're comprehensive, and now you have an idea of what to do if your player wants to challenge someone to a duel. The actual rules are a bit weak because 2nd edition didn't do light fighting well at all. The fact that the combat rules recommended for dueling are from multiple books doesn't help. It's highly appropriate advice for a Red Steel supplement, but the DM shouldn't have to hunt and peck for every rulebook to make dueling work. But if the books didn't contradict each other, would it be a Savage Coast supplement? Next up is the Church of Thyatis, one of the most prominent pantheons in Mystara, and one of the least talked about. Until now. Until then, you seem like a decent fellow. I hate to kill you.